What is wrong with you?
Well,
That was a rhetorical question.
actually, I think I'd like to answer it literally, Dana.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Here's my list. I have several pages here.
Oh, pages. Yeah, many. Yeah.
Welcome to Damn It, Jim, the podcast. Your weekly adventure into the fun and fascinating world of Star Trek, the original series. My name is Dana Smith, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and fellow Star Trek enthusiast, Dan Calzaretta. Good evening, Dan.
Dana, how you doing this evening?
Pretty good. Can't complain. So I'm excited to get into this episode, The Ultimate Computer. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about it as well. What our listeners don't know is that was take 3 of the intro. And if that's an indication of how things are going to go in this recording, we got a long night ahead of us, Dana.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's all downhill from here, Dan.
I never understood that saying. If it's all downhill from here means bad, right?
I thought it meant it's easier because, it's like you go uphill and that's the hard part, and then you go downhill and that's the easy part.
Yeah, that's what makes logical sense. But I thought the saying, it's all downhill from here, means that it's bad. Like, I guess you've reached the pinnacle and now it's just over. But the way you described it, that's how I always thought it should be, Dana.
Well, that's how I'm taking it. So let's use that one. So, Dan, you spent some time in Iowa.
The great state of Iowa, Dana.
The corn's all been picked and the fields are bare. But is there anything else to do there?
No, not really.
But you saw family there.
Yes. Yeah. So I did visit family. That was the reason for going out, and had a very good time. Got to see my dad, who is 92 years old, Dana.
That's amazing. That's great. Your dad's always been just seeming to be full of life. So it's really great to see that he's still kicking along.
Yeah. He says I'm full of something else, but
yeah, well, he knows you well. So
I did wear my Damn It Jim shirt when I was at the airport, flying out to Iowa. And I did not get pulled into a little room by TSA. Remember, we were thinking that might happen.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you made it back safe. I'm glad that you got to see your family, and glad your dad's doing well.
Yeah, thank you. So, Dana, what exciting things have been going on in your life in the last week?
We went to see a show downtown Denver.
Oh, what'd you see?
Leanne Morgan, the comedian. She had a Netflix special this year, and it was a big hit. And so she's really on a roll. And she was really funny. Let's get on to the listener comments, Dan.
Yeah, we got some good ones this week.
Last week, we discussed the Omega Glory.
Yeah.
One of our top 10 favorites.
No.
Pam McClung, our good friend, said, and the best part of this episode, Sulu saves the day. He was on top of his game while in charge of the Enterprise. And by the way, where was Scotty in all of this? And I had that exact same question.
Yeah.
I still think you ought to do a count on who all gets to sit in the command chair during the course of the series. And so I don't think it'd be too hard to go back and figure that out.
How about that? I got an idea. Let's put a listener on that. Maybe Pam would be willing to go back and kind of look at that.
Our friend Victor Root said Omega Glory. I call this episode the 4th of July episode.
Okay.
Makes sense. Our friend Lou from Canada says it's not Kirk, you put Kirk in capital letters, who violates the Prime Directive. It's Tracy. You can't break something that's already been broken. Not necessarily true. You could break something more. And that's what Kirk did. Glenn Strathy said, I think it was Tracy who violated the Prime Directive, interfering with the natural evolution on Omega 4. Kirk then had the job of stopping him and cleaning up the mess as best as possible. Roger Sorensen said, that pesky PD, meaning Prime Directive. The Kirk version only applies in societies in quote-unquote normal development. John Anderson said Cloud Williams' girl was hot. And finally, the last comment I have is Richard Johnson said, if every Federation law was violated as frequently as the Prime Directive is, it must have been like Dodge City on Gunsmoke.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I like that. Dan, do you have any extra comments? And what about voicemails?
Yes, it answers to both of those questions. I do. So Dana, Matt Fleming, he's been a longtime listener of ours. He said this about the Omega Glory. He said, Prime Directive? We ain't got no stinking Prime Directive. Totally true. Totally true, Matt. On YouTube, a user by the name of Tuning Spork, which I love the name, Tuning Spork, said Kirk put on his boots after an alien encounter, but that was in the episode Wink of an Eye, not by any other name. And neither of us saw that, Dana, so we actually were correct because we didn't see it, but apparently it's in Wink of an Eye, so that's coming up next season.
Well, something to look forward to then.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And yes, we did get one voicemail from a longtime listener by the name of Bill. The audio quality wasn't great, so I'm just going to recap what he said. He told a story about how a Pop-Tart once saved him from going to jail, Dana.
Wow.
Yeah. So here's how the story goes. He said it was the late 1970s. He wanted to hike part of the Appalachian Trail. And the night before he was supposed to get on the trailhead, he wasn't close enough yet. So he camped in what turned out to be a cemetery. Well, someone saw this dude the next morning, kind of leaving the cemetery. So they called the police. And when the police arrived, they had him empty like everything, his backpack, his pockets, everything. And they didn't find anything. And then the officer saw something in his shirt pocket and told him, hey, you need to take that out. You need to see what that is. And he pulls it out and it's a Pop-Tart. And he said, it's just a Pop-Tart. And the officer said, okay, you can put that back in your pocket. Well, behind the Pop-Tart was some marijuana, which was not legal anywhere then. And so the Pop-Tart was in front of the marijuana. Because of that, the cop didn't see it. And so let him go. But not only did he let him go, Bill then said, hey, could you give me a ride to the trailhead? And the cop was like, sure, hop on in the car. I'll give you a ride.
Want to smoke a doobie on the way?
So that was the story from Bill.
That's a great story. I like that.
Yeah, it was very funny. And that's it. That's all I have for today, Dan. This Damn It Jim podcast is sponsored by PhotoBucket. For 6 or 7 weeks now, we've been touting PhotoBucket as a perfect place to store all of your photo and video memories. We know that many of you have pictures and videos from your adventures across the Star Trek universe.
We have told you how PhotoBucket helps keep your memories safe. How PhotoBucket's compression-free backup cloud storage means your pictures and videos won't lose quality over time. Because you want to be sure your photos and videos are safe, PhotoBucket gives you one secure place to store your photo and video memories.
PhotoBucket is easy to use, and right now it's even easier to get started. Use the Damn It Jim promo code when you sign up and get 1 month of PhotoBucket for free.
Now, for a limited time, PhotoBucket is offering 1 terabyte of data to store all your Star Trek memories for just $5.
Check out PhotoBucket today and see the variety of ways they can help you manage your photos and videos. Go to photobucket.com today and start saving your memories.
Season 2, Episode 24, The Ultimate Computer. We see the Enterprise is pulling up to a space station when they are hailed by Commodore Enright. Enright says they have a visitor beaming aboard and doesn't provide any explanation. When they get to the transporter room, they meet Commodore Bob Wesley from the USS Lexington. Kirk is concerned. He's been told his crew will be removed to the space station and no further explanation has been given. And Wesley says the Enterprise will be involved in war games with the Lexington. Then he says there's a computer, the M5 Multitronic unit, that will control the whole ship.
That already sounds a little, dubious.
Just like a self-driving car, Dan. What could go wrong?
Did you see the one recently that drove into like this pit of concrete?
Yeah.
It's great.
I think it meant to do that.
That's actually the beginning of the end. These things that seem like, oh, they're funny and we see videos, Next thing you know, your Roomba's sucking your brains out at night. Their cat sitting on top of it controlling everything.
It's not the AI, it's the cats, Dan. So Wesley says this computer could be as revolutionary as warp drive. Wesley says that Dr. Daystrom will supervise all the tests, and all Kirk has to do is sit back and let the machine do all the work.
That's what he says when a yeoman comes in. Just sit back and let the machine do all the work. That's my nickname, the machine. Is that appropriate? Is that inappropriate? I don't even know anymore, Dave.
Next, we get the captain's log, stardate 4729.4. Kirk reports the M5 computer has been installed on board ship, and we have left the space station for test maneuvers. So Kirk, Spock, and McCoy get on the turbo lift, McCoy states he doesn't like it, and Spock replies, "We are attempting to prove it can run the ship more efficiently than man." And McCoy says,
"Maybe you're trying to prove that, Spock, but don't count me in on it."
The most unfortunate lack in current computer programming is that there is nothing available to immediately replace the Starship surgeon.
Yeah, that was a burn. So they get off the turbo lift and they head down an empty corridor. McCoy states he would resign because everyone else would be circuits and memory banks. Says, "You know the type, Spock." And I have in parentheses, McCoy needs to be mabinged. So they go into engineering and Kirk asks where Daystrom is, and Scotty looks around and finally spots him. Daystrom kind of stands up from behind a panel. It looked like he was hiding.
The way I took it is the director wanted this kind of dramatic reveal, Dana.
Yeah, and then when he stands, he's kind of an imposing figure.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, it would have been pretty unusual in 1968 to have a main character who's going to play a very significant role in this episode. In fact, the ultimate role really in this episode to be an African-American man, Dana.
Yeah, that's true. And then Daystrom introduces himself to Kirk and Spock, even though McCoy's kind of standing off behind Spock. And Spock applauds Daystrom for the great work on the M5. And McCoy speaks up and says, "Frankly, the only fact that I'm concerned about is if this thing doesn't work. There are not enough men aboard the ship to run it, and that's begging for trouble." Daystrom gets a funny look on his face and then looks at Kirk and says, "Who is this?" Like, why is this guy even here?
Yeah.
And then Kirk introduces McCoy, and Daystrom says, "This is a security area," basically saying, "Get this man out of here." And Kirk says McCoy has security clearance throughout the ship. So then we see Scotty and another engineer connecting the M5 unit. They go over to this port in a wall with this device.
It's Scotty who's holding this instrument and kind of powering up the computer, right? It wasn't the ensign.
It was kind of both of them. And then, when they are doing the final thing, that's Scotty.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure about that.
So Daystrom makes some adjustments on the control panel and states there's nothing wrong, just some minor adjustments. Kirk asks why it's M5 and not M1. Daystrom says 1 through 4 were not entirely successful.
Ooh, he probably should not have said that.
Yeah. He says, but the M5 is ready to take control of the ship. Kirk says there are certain things men need to do to remain men. That was just a weird comment.
It was very weird.
Daystrom says there are other things a man like you might do.
Like he could work at a 7-Eleven, the midnight shift.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, I didn't say the midnight shift, but I was going to say the late shift. Yeah, so.
That's scary, Dana.
Yeah, we've been doing this too long.
Mm-hmm.
He says, or perhaps you object to the possible loss of prestige and ceremony accorded to a starship captain. So Kirk heads towards the door and looks back, obviously unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And then he leaves. McCoy catches up to Kirk in the corridor and says, "Did you see the love lights in Spock's eyes?" The right computer finally came along. I thought that was a funny line.
That was a good line, yeah.
And he asks Kirk, "What's wrong?" And Kirk wonders aloud if he's afraid of losing his command to a computer. So later we see the bridge. Spock says the M5 has performed perfectly so far. Kirk kind of bitterly says, all it's done is the same thing a helmsman would have done, and he will run his ship his own way. So as they approach Alpha Carinae 2, and I'm sure I said that wrong. Probably said alpha wrong.
It's alfalfa, Dana.
As they approach Alpha Carinae 2, Daystrom reminds Kirk that the M5 must handle the approach, orbit, and then analyze landing party recommendations. Kirk seems put off by this idea and says he'll handle his ship his way. Kirk orders standard orbit, and Sulu says the M5 has already planned and executed the orbit. And Spock reports the planet is class M. Amazing. With life forms.
Oh.
So maybe the M5 will wipe them all out.
Or do something to violate the Prime Directive. That's what Kirk would do.
If it wants to be a real captain of an Enterprise. Yeah. And Spock hands Kirk a disc, and Kirk takes it, then says they'll send a landing party down to the planet with a geologist and astrobiologist, himself, Spock, and McCoy. And he hands the disc back to Spock, and Daystrom says, play M5's recommendations. So Spock puts the disk into the system. M5 starts reporting a landing party of Spock, the astrobiologist that Kirk recommended, and a different geologist from what Kirk ordered.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirk says it's just a matter of judgment who should go down. And Spock says the computer does not judge. It makes logical decisions. And Daystrom asks M5 why Kirk and McCoy were left off. M5 reports non-essential personnel. And Kirk seems quite stunned by this.
Yeah, ouch. And there's a printout that comes out of Spock's science station, right? That apparently has this data on it.
Yeah.
It's the only time in the entire 3 years of the series that we see paper come out of that machine, with the exception of when they did the first pilot. There was some in there, but,
Oh, yeah.
but it's the only time we see it, Dana. It's kind of interesting. Like, why? Why would it even matter in this episode? Just to kind of rub it in so Kirk has to look at it?
Spock reports 2 ships, one on the port bow, one on the stern. Spock suggests this could be an unscheduled war game to see how the M5 would respond. Commodore Wesley calls from the Lexington, stating that this is an unscheduled war game. M5 acknowledges and starts the red alert before Uhura can do it. A quick battle ensues as the M5 pursues one ship and fires at 1/100th power, then turns and attacks the other ship. Both ships flee. Daystrom says, "This is quite an impressive display for a machine, isn't it?" Spock reports the ship reacted more rapidly than human control could have maneuvered. Kirk looks at Spock and says, "Machine over man, Spock? It was impressive. It might even be practical." Spock replies,
But not desirable. Computers make excellent and efficient servants. But I have no wish to serve under them.
That's one of the best lines ever.
Yeah, very good.
Just then, Commodore Wesley hails the ship and says the test was successful and sends his compliments to M5 and Captain Dunsel. Suddenly, Kirk looks just like he's been struck. He leaves the bridge, and the crew look around kind of knowingly at each other, and McCoy asks, "Who is this Dunsel?" And Spock says, "Dunsel, Doctor," is a term used by midshipmen at Starfleet Academy. It refers to a part which serves no useful purpose.
Dunsel is actually an old nautical term that refers to something or someone on a ship that is no longer useful or can no longer be used. So someone who wrote this episode knew that and put it in. I really liked it. I thought it was pretty good.
Later in Kirk's quarters, McCoy comes in. He's carrying a tray that's got a napkin over the top of it. Kirk says he's not hungry. McCoy says, "This isn't chicken soup. I may be just a ship's doctor, but I make a Finagle's Folly that's known from here to Orion. I strongly prescribe it, Jim." He pulls back the napkin, revealing 2 glasses of green liquid. I was afraid it was absinthe.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was. Yep.
Kirk says he's never felt this way before. So useless, unneeded. He takes a glass and says, "Here's to Captain Dunsel." McCoy stops him and says, "Here's to James T. Kirk, captain of the Enterprise."
Oh.
Brought a tear to my eye. Kirk drinks the drink. Seems like it's a little strong as he kind of pauses. Then he says, "That's one of your better prescriptions." What I found was funny was this is very reminiscent of the original Star Trek pilot, where the ship's doctor came into Pike and made martinis for him.
Oh, that's a great point, Dana. I forgot about that.
Yeah, because Pike was feeling down and stuff, and so the doctor prescribed him this.
Yeah. While McCoy is prescribing remedies, let's talk about how to remedy another problem: backing up your photos and videos. The PhotoBucket app works like magic on Android and iOS, automatically backing up every photo and video you take on your smartphone while syncing it all to your desktop, tablet, and other devices.
No more having to worry about your phone's memory being full. PhotoBucket takes care of that for you, so you never have to worry if you'll have enough space on your phone to take pictures at the next Star Trek convention.
Now that's a prescription even McCoy would appreciate.
It's a logical choice too, Dan, especially since you can have 1 terabyte of storage to back up all those photos and videos.
Sign up today. Go to photobucket.com and see all the exciting features that will help you preserve your precious memories. Let's see what else McCoy is prescribing.
So Kirk gets a little melancholy and says, "All I ask is a tall ship and a star to sail her by." So just then Uhura calls. Spock reports that another ship has been spotted and this is not a drill. Back on the bridge, Spock reports that the vessel is an automated ore freighter, the Woden, No crew. We see the ship on the main viewer.
But Dana, that ship was the exact same design as Khan's ship.
It was Khan's ship. They just reused footage from that episode.
Oh, okay. So it actually was his ship.
Yeah. This is later in season 2, and I was reading about that money was getting tighter and tighter as they went through the season. So they reused a lot of clips. Like when they pulled up to the starbase, that's from The Trouble with Tribbles.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Sulu reports deflector shields came up and they're accelerating to warp 3. Kirk orders to give the ship a wide berth, but the M5 is in complete control. As Daystrom comes to the bridge, Spock reports photon torpedoes are locked on target. Kirk orders Daystrom to get control of the ship as the torpedoes fire, and the freighter is destroyed. M5 puts them back on their original course, and Spock reports all systems normal. So McCoy kind of flips out. He says, normal? That thing just went out of its way to destroy an ore freighter. And Daystrom says, there appears to be some defect in the control panel. Fortunately, it was only a robot ship. And Kirk says, but it shouldn't have destroyed anything. There could have easily been people on that ship. And McCoy says, in which case you'd be guilty of murder. That's great. Kirk kind of holds up a hand and says, Bones, shut the fuck up.
Don't make me do it, Bones.
Don't make me come over there and mabinga you. Kirk turns back to Daystrom and says to disconnect the computer. He says M5 is out of a job. In engineering, Kirk is walking quickly toward M5 and he says, okay, Daystrom, let's turn this thing off. Just then he's hit by a force field and thrown to one side. Spock goes to him and says, M5 is not only capable of taking care of the ship, it is also capable of taking care of itself. Kirk tells Daystrom to turn off the M5. Daystrom argues this is an exercise. Minor difficulties are to be expected, but they can all be corrected. Kirk says, corrected after you give me my ship back.
I like that, actually.
And Scotty says, let's turn it off at the source. Scotty and another engineer get the device that they use to turn the thing on, and they go over to the port to shut it off. Suddenly, there's like this huge beam that comes out of the M5 and disintegrates the engineer.
Now, did you notice, Dana, that earlier it's Scotty who's kind of up there doing the final adjustments? This time, Scotty gives the device to Harper and has him go over there and do it.
It was a teaching moment, Dan.
Anyway, but he gives this poor red shirt, the device. What does he expect?
You found out this thing's able to protect itself. Now it's going to draw power directly from the warp core, and that guy got right in the line.
Now, that was a good special effect. I mean, that beam hit him, and he was just gone.
Would have been great if there was like some ash on the floor. It's like, Scotty's like, better get somebody to wake that up. So Kirk about shit himself. He turns him, his eyes are wide, and he's like, that wasn't a minor difficulty. That wasn't a robot. That was one of my crew. We're down to 19 now.
Yeah, what was that guy doing on... Okay, there's only supposed to be 20 people on the ship. They're all, I guess, people who are needed. Why do they need this extra guy down in engineering? Obviously, Scotty could do it all.
Yeah, but you don't want Scotty getting zapped by the computer.
No, I know. So that's the only... Okay, here's how they decide. Right, we need the captain so we can show how useless he is. We need McCoy in case someone gets a hangnail. Uhura, because she really is the one who's running the ship, let's face it. And then we need one extra red shirt because someone's going to have to die in this episode.
I knew when I saw Harper in the beginning, I thought that's at least one. Kirk says, you mean to tell me you can't turn it off? And Daystrom says, it wasn't deliberate. M5 needed a new source of power. The crewman just got in the way. Kirk turns and orders Scotty and Spock to come with him, leaving Daystrom alone in engineering. So Spock, Kirk, and McCoy and Scotty are all in the conference room. Kirk says they rendezvous for war games within the hour. He says we must gain control of the ship by then. Spock says there is one possibility. The automatic helm navigation circuit relays might be disrupted from engineering level 3. Scotty agrees and says it could work if Spock helps him. So the next thing we see is Scotty and Spock in Jeffrey's tube. Scotty seems to believe he's got the problem solved. We go back to engineering. McCoy is arguing with Daystrom to turn off the computer. Daystrom argues that they don't understand. M5 is learning, adapting. McCoy says it's learning to kill, and Daystrom shakes his head no.
One machine can do all those things they send men out to do now. Men no longer need die in space or on some alien world. Men can live and go on to achieve greater things than fact-finding and dying for galactic space, which is neither ours to give or to take. We don't want to destroy life, we want to save it.
So do we need machines to save us from ourselves, essentially, to do all the hard work for us?
I mean, that's really at the core of this episode. I did like that line, though, Dana. I thought it really started to show the descent of Daystrom into almost madness.
Then Spock calls and says they are ready. In the corridor, Daystrom is with Kirk, and as Scotty and Spock are still in the Jeffries tube, Spock explains that Scotty is going to apply the circuit disruptor, and he will trip the manual override into control. Then there's an electrical charge sound, and then Scotty says, "That's it, Mr. Spock." Spock says, "Manual override is in control." Kirk calls the bridge and says, "We've got helm and navigational control. Turn us about. Have Mr. Chekhov plot course back to the space station." Sulu reports helm is not responding. Navigational control still locked by M5. Spock turns to Kirk, says, "It appears, Captain, we've been doing what used to be called pursuing a wild goose." Spock says M5 is acting with an almost human quality, and Daystrom says, "Yes, quite right, Mr. Spock. You see, one of the arguments against computers controlling ships was that they couldn't think like men." He adds, "I've developed a method of impressing human engrams upon the computer circuits." He says the relays are not unlike the synapse of the brain. M5 thinks, Captain. Uhura calls and asks Kirk to report to the bridge. Uhura reports 4 Federation ships are on an intercept course, and Kirk says, "The war games." McCoy says, "But the M5 doesn't know it's a game." And Kirk, "Correction, Bones. Those 4 ships don't know M5's game. And M5 is going to destroy them."
And M5 says, "McCoy, please come to this terminal so I can mabinga your ass."
I think the M5's voice was Scotty again.
Yeah, it was, yeah. He also did the voice of Enright in this episode, because we never see Enright.
Oh, really? I did not know that. So next we see the 4 ships approaching. On the bridge, Uhura is trying to hail the other ships, unsuccessfully, of course. Kirk, Spock, Daystrom, and McCoy enter the bridge. Uhura finally gets a message from the Lexington. Commodore Wesley states this is an M5 drill. Repeat, an M5 drill. Kirk turns to Daystrom. Does the M5 know this is a drill?
A drill? Hell, he thinks it's a sawzall. Bad joke. Sorry, Dana.
Chekhov reports shields are up, so phasers start firing. Spock reports a hit on the Lexington. On the bridge of the Lexington, we see the ship is rocked. Wesley asks, "What the hell is Kirk doing? Doesn't he know that they're fighting the computer and not Kirk?"
I mean, you'd think he would have figured that out almost immediately.
Kirk turns to Daystrom. "There's got to be a way to shut it off," and Daystrom says it's fully protected itself. Uhura reports a message coming through from the Excalibur. Wesley says, "Have you gone mad? Break off the attack. We have 53 dead here. The Excalibur has 12 dead. What are you trying to prove?" Uhura says M5 is still blocking her transmissions.
Why is it, Dana, that they can hear what the other ship is saying, but they can't talk back?
And Wesley asks, "Why won't you answer? Come in. Break off your attack." Kirk grabs Daystrom, says, "There's your murder charge. Deliberate, calculated. It's killing men and women. 4 starships, 1,600 men and women." Kirk says, "The computer tie-in. You spoke to it before. It knows you." Uhura reports she can hear Wesley's message to Starfleet. Wesley reports what has happened and says the only way to stop the attack is to destroy the Enterprise. Daystrom says, "No, they can't do that. They'll destroy the M5.
Hello? What about the rest of us?
Yeah, I'm like, I think you're missing the big picture there, pal. Kirk tells him, "Talk to the M5. So Daystrom goes to Spock's station and requests a tie-in to the M5. Daystrom states his name and M5 acknowledges him. And then Daystrom tells it to break off the attack. Daystrom tries to calm himself and says, "But these are not enemy vessels. These are Federation starships. You're killing, murdering human beings. You were not created for that purpose. To kill is breaking of civil and moral laws we've lived by for thousands of years." Kirk comes up to Daystrom and says, "The M5 must be destroyed." And Daystrom turns and says, "Destroyed, Kirk? No, we're invincible. Look what we've done. Your mighty starships, 4 toys to be crushed as we choose." Spock's had enough at this point, so he just does the Vulcan nerve pinch on him.
Just to get him to shut up. Didn't you think that was a bit of a leap, though, there, Dana? going from talking about how killing is against moral laws and society's laws, and then all of a sudden he kind of flips. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I thought the same thing. I thought it was a big swing. Kirk orders him taken to sickbay. They carry him off the bridge and McCoy goes with him. Uhura reports Lexington is receiving a message from Starfleet. She seems a bit shocked, and then she plays the message from Starfleet stating that the Enterprise is to be destroyed. Spock says, every living thing wants to survive, Captain. Daystrom must have impressed that instinctive reaction upon the computer. And Kirk says, suppose it's still open to impression. Suppose it absorbed the regret Daystrom felt for the deaths it caused, the guilt. Chekhov reports the ships are coming within range. Kirk does the tie-in with M5. Kirk tells M5 they're about to be under attack, that one ship is already dead or crippled. The M5 says it must survive, and Kirk asks why.
Oh, God, Dana, I can see what's about to happen here.
Yeah. Kirk says the M5 murdered men aboard those ships. Must you survive by murder? M5 says murder is contrary to the laws of man and God. He tells it to scan the Excalibur. After a moment, the M5 responds, no life. Kirk asks, what is the penalty for murder? After a moment, M5 responds, death.
I thought the only death penalty in all of the Federation was visiting Talos 4.
So M5 says this unit must die.
Wow, that was quick.
So we see in engineering the big beam that disintegrated Harper shuts off and the computer just shuts down. Chekhov reports the deflector shields have dropped. Sulu says phasers have no power. Spock says the M5 is committing suicide to atone for the sin of murder. But isn't suicide a sin? Kirk sends Spock and Scotty down to engineering to disconnect the M5 completely.
Yeah, Scotty's like, whoa, hold on a second. What if the M5's playing? What if the M5 is playing possum?
That was better. I'm not standing in front of that beam. Yeah, so.
You get your ass in front of that beam, Captain. Captain Dunsel.
From engineering, Spock reports the M5 is disconnected. Scotty says he can get him shields, and Kirk says, what about communications? Scotty says that'll take a little bit more time.
I would think the shields would take longer.
Really? Shields can be up, but you can't restore communications? You were able to hear people before.
Yeah.
Maybe just like open up the mic?
Yeah, plug it in, you know.
Yeah. So Kirk tells him to cut the power and leave the shields down. On the Lexington, Wesley studies the Enterprise and says the Enterprise looks dead. After a minute, he says, I'm going to take a chance that it's not just laying a trap. And he calls off the attack force. On the Enterprise, they hear this announcement. Everyone smiles and breathes a sigh of relief. Spock asks how Kirk knew the attack force would not attack, as playing dead was just the trap the M5 would have done. And Kirk says he knows Bob Wesley and says, I gambled on his humanity. They get on the turbo lift and he adds, his logical selection was compassion. McCoy says, compassion, that's one thing no machine ever had. Maybe it's the one thing that keeps men ahead of them. Care to debate that, Spock? Spock replies, it would be most interesting to impress your memory engrams on a computer, Doctor. The resulting torrential flood of illogic would be most entertaining.
That's a great line.
And Dan, that's how the show ends.
So, Dana, you have some information about one of the actors in this episode.
Yeah, Dan. William Marshall, who played Richard Daystrom, was a pretty well-known actor from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He was born in Gary, Indiana. He was trained as a classical actor as well as an opera singer. He had that great baritone voice, Dan.
You could definitely hear that.
Shows up in TV shows and movies. One of his biggest roles was the 1972 cult vampire melodrama Blackula, which I remember when that came out when I was a kid. And then also the sequel, Scream, Blackula Scream. I just loved him in this role as Daystrom.
You know, Dana, he also was on Pee-wee's Playhouse. He played the king of cartoons. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I didn't watch Pee-wee's Playhouse a lot, but I do remember seeing him on there. He died at age 78 from Alzheimer's.
Yeah, it's too bad.
He died exactly 4 years after the passing of DeForest Kelley, and his cousin was Paul Winfield. Paul Winfield, he was in Star Trek Wrath of Khan.
Very cool.
Dan, do you have anything else you want to discuss about the show?
Just one thing, Barry Russo, who played Commodore Wesley, he was also Commander Giotto. We called him Gelato from Devil in the Dark, the infamous Schmitter episode.
I thought I recognized, but I thought he made a good commander.
He did.
Okay, do you want to talk about themes and dilemmas, Dan?
Yeah, Dana, I think maybe it's obvious, but human beings being replaced by machines seems to be the dilemma in this episode. And even now, we are in a transition period where many people are facing this. For example, AI. Right? A lot of people are worried that artificial intelligence is going to replace them. Their jobs won't exist anymore. And so it causes a lot of fear, I think. But it's not a new fear. It seems like we've been dealing with this issue for a long time. Dana, how about a dilemma for you?
I was looking at this as it's kind of like the ultimate man versus machine. Was thinking, maybe like John Henry against the steam shovel type of thing. Kirk feels like he's got to battle, and we actually see him kind of fighting against the M5 in the beginning, trying to prove that the ship and crew are equivalent to what the M5 can do.
Well, I guess I have a question then for you, Dana. Do you think machines making slaves of their creators is ever going to come to pass? I mean, or has it already in some ways?
Wow, that's pretty deep. Yeah, it's not Skynet, what we saw in Terminator, but I mean, in many days, I feel like I'm a slave to my computer. I depend on it so much.
So, Dana, what was one of the best parts of this episode for you?
Dan, this might seem kind of silly, but the whole cast is involved. And it seems like it's been a while since we've had everyone involved. I mean, we had Uhura on the bridge. We had Sulu there, Scotty, Chekhov, everybody. And I really like that when the whole crew is involved.
Yeah, that's a great point.
How about you? Do you have a best part for us?
Yeah, William Marshall as Dr. Daystrom. I think his ability to show this like slow descent into madness without overplaying it was really impressive. And I also liked and appreciated his ability to be dismissive to Kirk, McCoy, and Scotty.
Yeah, the only one he seemed to have any kind of respect for was Spock, and even that was fleeting at times. So,
how about another best part for you?
Pacing was great, really kept the action moving, and the attack by the attack force was really well done, I thought, for that time. I was really surprised by how they kept that moving. Do you have another best one for us, Dan?
Spock's line where he said something to the effect of he didn't have any desire to serve under a computer. I mean, it was a little surprising, but I think really gave us a good insight into Spock. How about another best part for you?
I had the same thing as you, is that Daystrom is a great character, and I really liked William Marshall. Do you have another best part, Dan?
I got a bonus one. When Ensign Harper gets obliterated by M5, I thought that was awesome.
I knew you would like that.
Dana, how about a worst part of this episode for you?
It's not as bad as some of the other episodes we've seen, but Kirk, once again, talks a computer to death. And it made me wonder, why couldn't Daystrom have gotten through to it? I mean, he was saying kind of the same things that Kirk later said. How about you, Dan?
Exactly the same, with the addition of, it didn't take long this time for him to talk it to death. Yeah. And we didn't see any smoke or, circuits kind of flashing or, you know what I'm saying? It just turned off. I guess this was the fourth time. The other ones were The Changeling, The Return of the Archons, and I'm Mud. How about another worst part for you?
Seems like if you couldn't communicate with a ship that was attacking in quote-unquote war games, you would back away until communication could be established and assume that something was wrong. But the other ships just act like it's Kirk. That's the one part of this that bothered me a lot. Do you have another worst part for us, Dan?
Well, this is kind of a stretch because I really liked this episode. There was a shot of Chekhov on the bridge when the battle's going on and the Enterprise is kind of shooting at these other ships, and he's nervously biting his hand. I don't know if you noticed that. It just was so weird. It was just weird, Dana.
That's like a acting thing where they go, how do you show fear? How do you show, stress? And people, for some reason, always put their fist in their mouth. I've never done that in my life,
Yeah, if I was in an acting class and they said that, I would just shit myself.
And you would be hailed as the greatest actor that ever took that acting class.
So, Dana, what happened on this date in history?
Dan, this episode aired on March 8th, 1968. The number one song in the U.S. was still Love is Blue by Paul Marriott and his orchestra. For the third week in a row, Esther and Abby Ophram had the number one song in the U.K., Cinderella Rockefeller. Whew.
It's horrible. It is horrible.
Yeah, I think watching them made it even worse. I mean, it's a bad song to begin with, but watching the two of them sing it was even worse. So
very bad.
Okay, on to better things. Speaking of rock and roll, Bill Graham's New York rock venue, Fillmore East, opened in Manhattan on that date, which was a huge place for concerts. The Allman Brothers live at Fillmore East is an album that comes to mind. Also on that date, all 98 crew members of the Soviet ballistic missile submarine K-129 were killed when the Golf II class sub sank in the North Pacific, about 90 nautical miles southwest of Hawaii. Starting in 1974, the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency would begin attempting to salvage the sunken submarine using the ship Hughes Glomar Explorer. In 2005, authors Ken Sewell and Clint Richmond would advance the theory in their best-selling book, Red Star Rogue, that the K-129 had actually been trying to launch a nuclear warhead at Hawaii's Pearl Harbor, and that failed launch had caused the submarine's demise.
Maybe they were going to take a look at the Titanic.
They were in the wrong ocean.
There you go.
So March 6th, the 84th and final episode of Lost in Space, the CBS science fiction series, was aired. Final episode, Junkyard in Space, ended with the Voyagers still lost in space. On March 10th, the town of Acme, Wyoming, located in Sheridan County, with a population of about 100, was sold to a group of Chicago investors. The town had been founded in 1910 by the Acme Coal Company and sold for, take a guess, how much a town of 100 people sold for?
$350.
You're way off. It sold for $100,000. That's all I got for that, Dan.
Don't wait for the 23rd century to save your important photos. The future is here now. PhotoBucket is the photo-saving tool everyone has been looking for.
With PhotoBucket, you can easily upload, store, and organize all your Star Trek memories in one secure place. Share your amazing convention moments, cosplay triumphs, and even those hilarious behind-the-scenes bloopers with fellow fans around the galaxy.
But that's not all. PhotoBucket goes beyond just photos. You can create stunning Star Trek-themed albums, add captions and tags, and even create personalized slideshows that will make Captain Kirk himself Orion green with envy.
And here's the best part. PhotoBucket integrates seamlessly with all your favorite social media platforms. Share your adventures and let your Star Trek spirit shine across the entire universe. And if you use the promo code DAMNITJIM at sign up, you'll get 1 month free for being a loyal listener.
Visit photobucket.com now and unlock a universe of possibilities. On to the counts, Dana. So, Dana, what do we have for the dead crewman count today?
Well, it was the assistant engineer Harper who got vaporized by M5. So that was 1. Puts us up to 47, Dan.
Man, Dana, I wish we could count the people on the other starships. We'd have a lot. How about the shirtless Kirk, rip shirt Kirk count?
We're in kind of a doldrums here. Haven't seen a rip shirt in a couple of weeks, so we're still at 17, Dan.
Yeah, kind of same for this next one, the he's dead count.
Even though McCoy was there, he didn't say it. And because there's nothing to say it to, we're stuck at 14.
Yeah, he was totally obliterated. I'm a doctor, not a fill in the blank.
Could have been, I'm a doctor, not a bartender, but didn't say anything like that, so we're still stuck at 8, Dan.
All right, the supreme being count.
Could we count M5 as a supreme being?
I don't think so.
I was just checking.
Okay, good.
But I had 0 for this week, and that leaves us at 10 still.
Violation of the Prime Directive.
Not this week, Dan, so we're still at 9.
And taking over of the Enterprise count.
M5 definitely took over the Enterprise, Dan, so that moves us up to 10.
Well, you know, I did enjoy this episode a lot, Dana. I know we made fun of certain parts of it, but I really liked this one.
Yeah, I do too. Like I said, probably in my top 10 of the Star Trek episodes. But Dan, what do we have next week?
Next week, Dana, we have bread and circuses.
Oh, I think we'll be able to get some humor out of this one.
Well, Dana, once again, I had a great time talking about Star Trek with you this week, and I hope the rest of your week goes great.
As always, Dan, I have enjoyed this discussion, and I hope our listeners do too. Thanks again to all our listeners for writing in and for using the phone and calling us. Dan, what's the voicemail number?
Yeah, make sure to call the Damn It Jim hotline at 509-676-6298. We'd love to hear from you.
So thanks again, and until we meet again, live long and prosper.
Thanks once again for listening to Damn It Jim, the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at dammitjimpodcast@gmail.com or join the discussion on Facebook, Instagram, X, or YouTube. Make sure to join Dan and Dana next week for Bread and Circuses. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week and remember to live long and prosper. This has been a Ramble Jar production.